As a light novel reader that knows what's about to happen, I have to admit I'm pretty excited for the events to come. Now, I have to admit that many anime-onlys watching this episode might find that this episode was a tad boring, or at the very least might not be as interesting as the first two episodes, and the reason for that is because of the lack of Ainz, which is one of the big things I talked about in my Season 2 reviews. That Ainz, ever since Season 1, he won't be the sole focus for the story. We'll constantly have POV shifts throughout the story from going forward from Season 2 onward, and once again, that is obvious with this episode, or the arc we're currently getting into. Now, as I said when I opened up with my Season 3 reviews, I did say that Ainz will have a little bit more of a role this season, which is definitely true. But at the same time, he's not always going to be frontline and center and the main focus of every single second in this arc. So if anyone is disappointed with this episode, most likely it's the same people that I talked to about in the last season reviews, where I said that if you're disappointed that Ainz is not always going to be the focus, then honestly this series is probably not going to be for you, because it's not always going to be about him. Now, besides that, if you're not caring about having Ainz every second, some others might look at this episode and still be a little bit bored. And the reason why is because, let's be real here, it's mainly just seeing the village that Ainz saved a while back from Season 1, and seeing their day-to-day life, how they've changed, how they're a little bit more accepting of Demi, humans, and seeing how, they're slowly changing as a society. And so I can see why some might find this relatively boring, but at the same time, it's kind of like a parallel to what Ainz goes through, or what could potentially happen in the future of the series. So let's get right into that. The importance of this episode, or this arc in general, is to show how humanity would accept demi-humans. Think about it like this, okay? Goblins and humans coexisting in this episode. See, in Enri's village, you see where these goblins are just wandering around, and, nobody's being hostile towards them. Everybody respects the goblins. Nobody's trying to kill each other. It's honestly unnerving in a way, because when you hear about goblins in other fantasy stories, which I talked about in my last episode review, you never see something like that. You don't see goblins interacting peacefully with humans. It's usually not peaceful whatsoever. And so, obviously, it's strange, but at the same time, it shows that this society is slowly taking shape, forming, and changing. However, throughout the episode, you have undertones of how the old society was, or how majority of the world is towards demi-humans. For instance, when Enri tries to go into town and all that, and, request help from the Adventure Guild, sell merchandise, whatever, basically the goblins couldn't go in with her. And the reason for that, if they were to get even close to the town, the adventurers, the guardsmen, and all that, they would have cut down all the goblins like nothing, because they see all demi-humans as the enemy. So right there, that's the big point of what this episode was really trying to show, with these undertones that, what Ainz has going on in this new village and all, what Enri has managed to form as well, it's very uncommon. It's not something you see at all, which is why Agu, the little child, goblin in this episode was very surprised as well, because usually goblins don't coexist with humans. Usually, it's a one-sided relationship. Either the humans are forcing the goblins into slavery, or the goblins are forcing humans into slavery, or even consuming them as food. That's usually how it goes. Now, the anime episode did kind of cut that little detail out, but at the same time, you could kind of put the, 1 and 2 together and realize what, the kid was implying when he was talking about just how the relationship between the goblins and humans are very weird. But anyways, though, that's one of the big points of what this episode is trying to do, and honestly, I'm a big fan of stuff like that. I love world building like that. I know it's not always on Ainz, it's not focusing on Ainz right now, or even on Nazarick, but it's showing how the effects of what Ainz has done is having everlasting changes to the world around him. So yeah, that's the importance of this arc, or what this episode was trying to show us. Enri trying to take the role up as a leader of the village. Now, honestly, let's be real here. When we first saw her character introduced a long time ago, we did not expect her to eventually lead the charge for her village. It's honestly something that's just a little bit weird. But at the same time, there's good reason for why she has to lead the village. It's not just the fact that she could potentially be a good leader, but it's because of her circumstances and being forced into the situation she's currently in. The summons, for instance, the goblins. See, she summoned all those goblins, goblins through an item that Ainz gave her. And since she's technically, aka a summoner, she has control of them. And obviously, since they're summons, they'll care more about their master than anyone else. Example, what Ainz has to go through, okay? You know, what Beta, you know who Beta is, or, you know, Demi, you know, Albedo, Shaltir, all of them, okay? All of them, they would gladly kill anyone else just to protect their master Ainz. They would probably even kill each other just to protect Ainz. That's just how they are, okay? They care more about, you know, their master or the supreme beings over anything else. That's kind of what you can throw on to Enri in this episode, and how she is someone that has these goblins that basically worship her, look up to her like a master, and if she was ever in danger or if something was to happen to her or whatever, they would prioritize her life over anyone else's. Which means if she wasn't, you know, the de facto leader of the village, they would just kidnap her, run away with her, and, you know, they would leave the village to die. That's all they care about. They only care about her. They don't care about the village. So that's what makes her so important to lead the village. If she is the leader of the village and she has these morals to protect the village, she'll never leave. Obviously, the goblins, they will stand up and fight for the village as long as she wants to protect the village as well. So that's the big point here on why Enri is so important to being stationed as the leader. If she's not that, then the goblins are not going to care too much, and like I said, they're just going to take her and leave if the going gets tough. Now, let's get into Beta for a second. Beta, which is in, you know, one of the maidservants, that was one of the big focuses of this episode. Beta, she is a sadist, obviously. I mean, it was even stated at the end. But many are probably looking at her dialogue at the end of the episode like, oh, what does that mean? What's that imply? What does this mean for the story? What does this mean for the village? What's going to happen here? Well, at the end of the day, we gotta remember, all of these individual NPCs, they were programmed by the Supreme Beings. Individual personalities and all that. We've seen it for Albedo, Demi, you know, we've seen this time and time again. They have their own personalities because of their creators. And all of these different sisters and all that, they have, like, different, you know, programming to where they're like, they have this personality that they go by. Even if, you know, it might not be the best thing to do, they just go by this certain personality, which Beta, she's a sadist. But at the same time, you gotta remember how Demi is as well. Ainz doesn't really know what Demi is doing. He doesn't know that Demi is going around, you know, using humans as basically sheep, you know, skinning them, using them as scrolls, making them breed with other demi-humans. He has no idea. Demi's going out of his way to progress the situation of the guild, or, you know, the Supreme Beings. And so, most likely what Beta's doing, she might take it into her hands to progress the goals of what Ainz wants, or what she thinks Ainz wants, and it could lead to the destruction of the village. Who knows? That's the big question that you're wondering about when it comes to this episode towards the end. Now, speaking of Yuri Alpha, that was also shown at the end of the episode right next to Beta. Now, that scene, it wasn't really clarified in the anime, but in the manga, or the light novel, correction, sorry. In the light novel, Yuri Alpha questions, like, why are all my sisters horrendous? Why are they so evil, basically? And the reason why is because of just the programmers that programmed all of them, you know, the Supreme Beings, and she was programmed to be a little bit nicer than her other sisters or other maids and all that, and that's why Yuri Alpha just seems so indifferent to what Beta wanted at the end. It's because she just has, like, this righteous look, or outlook on things, instead of just wanting to be pure evil, or just, you know, demented in a lot of ways, like, you know, how Demi is, Albedo, and all of that. Let's get into a little bit more into the goblins and what separates Enri and her relationship with the goblins from everyone else that's in the village. Now, as I already stated in this video, Enri, she is their leader, so obviously they're the protector because, you know, she's their master. But at the same time, Enri treats them with respect. And the reason for that is because she calls all of them by their name. Now, obviously, they might not care too much about that, but it does hold a lot of significance that, you know, she is going out of her way to remember each individual name, recognize them, speak to them like an actual person, while all the other villagers, they kind of look at, you know, the goblins more as servants than anything else to Enri, and so they just call them goblins, or just like, hey, and all that, help out and all that. They don't really ever call the goblins by any names. So that's kind of what separates Enri from the other villagers. And also on top of that, the servants of Enri, or the goblins, basically, they don't accept thanks whatsoever from the villagers, which, once again, that was another detail that the anime kind of cut out, but they don't accept thanks at all. Every time that, you know, they're offered thanks, they're like, you know, give it to, you know, my master Enri. That's pretty much what they always say. And do you not see a correlation with that to what's going on with Ainz? For instance, Ainz, he's trying to make it to where his NPCs, employees, his children, they accept thanks. They want stuff. They want awards, gifts, whatever, payment. And he doesn't want them just to do things for free, be a sweatshop and all that. He wants them to be their own person. And that's the big point here, showing that Enri's dealing with her own problems, very similar to what Ainz is doing, how he's dealing with his own problems, and how he's trying to, help out to where, these actual summons or, servants or whatever, children, they will, actually want something and accept thanks when something is given to them instead of just offering it to someone up higher above them. So yeah, that's a big point there of what this episode was also trying to show, that there is a correlation between Enri and Ainz. But okay, is there anything else to talk about? I'm trying to think here. Is there anything else that I kind of left out? Oh, yes. The adventure inside of the city with Enri. So, the stuff inside the city, I think it's kind of obvious what went down. There was some nods to what happened, but I guess I should go through it and kind of clarify. So, that scene to where Enri kind of passes out, like she goes into the Adventure Guild and she requests help and she's basically turned away, like shoo-shoo and all that, like you're not a customer, and she was treated really badly. You saw her lay down and she passed out, she took a nap. In that scene with her, when she wakes up, she realizes the person that was at the counter starts talking to her like, hey, I need all the details, I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble if you don't let me know and all that. And the reason why the person at the counter was so worried and scared was because obviously someone came in and paid for everything, or showed up and did something that worried her, aka Ainz. Remember, Ainz, he has a connection to Enri, and on top of that, he's kind of like in charge of the village too, and so he obviously would be in his best interest if it was kind of protected. And so, when he probably walked in when she was passed out, he probably said something like, hey, I recommended her to come to the guild and all that, I'm paying for it and all that, or I just wanted to do this just to, make it official, that I'm doing it instead of doing it as a side job and making you guys look bad. Most likely the person at the counter was very worried because she turned away a client that Ainz himself told to go there, which is why she got worried, because you could kind of put A and B together from the way the scene was done when you see little Hemsuke in the alleyway and all that, but I just wanted to point that out in case you kind of missed it for whatever reason. But that's about it. I think that pretty much covers everything else that happened in this episode of Overlord. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.